Welcome to the Autonomic Healing Podcast. I'm Tom Pels.
And I'm Ruth Lawrenson. We'll be unpacking what it looks like to activate your brain to holistically manage stress and trauma that bring healing to the mind, body, and spirit.
Being free to live authentically as humans.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started. So we are here and we're talking about spiritual formation again. We had the last episode, which I love, Tom. Oh. I know it's like a bit of an overview of the spiritual formation piece in AHA, and we listened to a few different examples of people who'd gone through it. But this premise that through autonomic healing, through the activation of homeostasis, we get to connect with God.
We do. We get to connect with ourselves as spirit, our being, who we are fundamentally. And we get to connect with that with what is transcendent and so much more than us, but we're a part of that transcendent.
So today we are going to unpack a little bit of
mine. We're going to turn the tables.
I know.
It's going to be a conversation with Ruth. Yay! Finally.
So, yeah, I'm going to share a little bit about my experience with... Tom's going to interview me, or we're going to have a conversation.
Yeah, so
we don't do interviews. But you're going to talk to me about my experience with spiritual formation. And we realised today it was about a year and a half ago, just over a year and a half ago. So much has happened in that time. So...
Yep, and this journey began back in April a year and a half ago. And some changes have happened in Ruth's life.
Well, yeah, so much has changed. And so I think it's a interesting practice, isn't it, to think, well, how far have I come, from a year and a half ago?
Yes.
And I think there's just a general trend in life that change does happen, but there's a remarkable level of change when I think through what's happened in my life over a year and a half. I mean, even just doing this podcast. I mean, we're almost a year in with this podcast.
Yeah.
But so that's one of the things. But I've had major transitions in my calling, in my career. I've literally kind of just started multiple new things. So
yep. And we'll get to those.
We will get to them.
But we're going to lay the foundation. And
because a year and a half ago, I wasn't in this place.
Oh, not even remotely. No. And you were at that point, and this has been transformational for you to activate homeostasis, not just in the body, but in the mind and in your spirit. And that's been observably transformational for you. And what was previously, and I don't think this is an overstatement, pretty miserable place, but trying to put up a good fight and a good front, but not a sense of contentment or a sense of forward movement.
Yeah.
Stuck, I think.
Yeah, I would use the word stuck. I felt, obviously I came, the first session I had with you was because of more trauma-related issues in my life. I felt like, I'd done numerous years in therapy to try and unpack certain issues. But I kept feeling it in my body. So when I heard about what you were doing with the somatic work, that was why I came. But then I was so intrigued. I remember that first call that we had, you do a consultation with people if they want it.
Yeah.
And you talked about, you just mentioned fleetingly, about, there's this problem solving thing and there's also a spiritual formation thing. And as someone who has been in Christian ministry, I was so intrigued by that. But I kind of followed through, did the somatic work. But what was going on in my life separately, or I don't know whether it was separate or not, but there was, in spaces of my calling, in spaces of my career, in the space of what I guess I would dream to do, I felt stuck, and I felt like, where am I? I was in that space, and So, there's this whole other track to my story. Not only do I feel like there's been this healing in my body, but actually this incredible movement forward through the problem solving and the spiritual formation.
Yep. And that initial problem solving was about not connecting with God in that very personal, nurturing way.
Yes.
And by extension, then struggling to connect with belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And that was your problem solving.
Yeah.
And as that unfolded, the first thought after, why should I trust that I am loved?
Good question.
And not the only person to have that. Nearly universal. Why should I trust that I'm loved? Even though are. And by many. But that internalization, that embracing of being loved. And the first thing out of your mouth was knowing I am loved. Right there. And then that went through and it got down to where it got very image and pictures. And that's how you often would do that. Some people, when they do the problem solving and the spiritual formation, it's very descriptive. It's like a conversation.
Yes.
For others, it's more, and like for you, it's images and pictures and word pictures and things like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I had no idea, obviously I have no idea what other people are doing in the space. This was my first time. So, I'm just like, ask the question, activate, and then
things
share what's happening.
Yep.
And so for me, I just see everything. So I'm just sharing so I don't know that even that other people are maybe sharing words. I'm kind of sharing what I'm seeing. And so, and that feels very... When I think through like my journey with God generally throughout my life, I've had, even if I've spent time in prayer, I see things. Or in my dreams, I've had dreams where I see things, and I would say that they've been very spiritual. So it feels very similar to me, that way in which I guess it's the way in which
different brains and spirits process information in different ways.
Yeah.
And it's the way yours does. So it got along the way in that problem solving, it got to a place where you had a picture and a memory, literally, of a very traumatic moment in your life previously. And what was fascinating was now the whole picture has everything else, and it was in very great detail, but that was what had been previously very dark in your life, you said, is now full of light. And there's an eagle there, and an eagle symbolically is often associated with God. And I am now seeing it in a different way.
Yeah. That
moment from your past, but seeing it recast, full of light and in a new way.
With an eagle there.
And yep. And the next thing, and I'm just taking dictation, because that's how this works. I'm just, And I'm seeing this like, I think it's from the eagle, like solid gold feathers. And there's a couple of them. And they are like pens. But I kind of feel like they are mine.
Yeah.
And then that went on, and it was nothing for ages. But now I see myself as an adult with these 2 gold feathers in my back pocket and the eagle's on my shoulder. And then that's where that one wrapped up.
Yeah.
Then your spiritual formation.
So that was my problem solving.
That was your problem solving. And then the spiritual formation one, the connecting with the transcendent, with God in a different way. And the invitation posed was, so what have you got for me in this space in my life, God? And
another good question.
Yes. And there was this very strange, very particular date on a wine bottle, which really connected with you and your history in Wales and all the rest of that in a very particular way. But going down through that, there was this clock, and it was an alarm clock, symbolic of, hello, wake up, it's time, and the feathers again.
Yes. Yeah.
And the eagle has come, and it's sat on my shoulder like before. And in this space that you're in, you said, I feel like I'm supposed to read something. There's something on the wall. And I feel like I'm sat on the floor looking at a wall and there's writing on it. And I'm trying to see it. But it's like I can't read it. But I know there's writing on it. And I feel like it is truth. And the eagle has come, sat on my shoulder. And I feel like I'm supposed to read something on the wall, but it's all blurry. And I think I'm trying too hard. So then it transported you back out into the street where you're setting up for a party. This is table and welcoming people. But it had all been walled off. Earlier in the spiritual formation, that wall had broken open and there was light coming into that dark space. And just being out on the street and people coming out of their places and being present. But all the doors had been locked and no handles. You couldn't get into them. And I get a sense that the eagle, God, saying, try again to open the door. There's no handle, but I'm putting my hand on the door and it just seems to open very easily. And there's loads of people inside. I can see everything. I can see words over them, like how they are. And I'm understanding these things. So now I'm kind of walking around these people and it's like so weird. I can see these words over them and connecting with them, their thoughts, understanding things. And it's dawned on me that all of these people are behind this door and there's no one out there on the street. And it's like nice in there. Everyone is happy and a sense of these floating words over people to connect things to the people. But I feel like the eagle is on my shoulder and I feel like he's saying, these people are supposed to be out. And then I'm back in that mind. And I'm sat by that wall again, and the eagle is with me, and I'm looking at the clock and looking at the wall, and there's like a message on the wall, but I don't know what it is. It's strange. I'm just sat there trying to read this wall. I can't read. And I have the alarm clock with me, and the eagle is there. Oh, I see the quill. The feather is in my hand. It's a golden pen. And I think I'm supposed to write. I'm not supposed to read. I feel like I'm being asked to write. I've been trying to read, but I'm supposed to write. And then going a little further down, the street. Well, before that, it feels like the walls are never meant to be there in the first place. Those walls that separate people. And the street, I've managed to take down some of the wall. For some reason, I'm trying to assemble a table on the street, but I'm doing it on my own and I'm asking people to help me. A few of them are coming out. We're putting up a long trestle table down the street. The scene I have in my mind is this long table on the street. And the street is not as dark anymore because there's this broken wall and the clock is on the table and I'm putting the wine out on the table. And now I'm in a completely different place. It's a garden. It's like God's reaching out to me, putting his hand on my heart. And I think I'm hearing God. But these are the words I'm hearing. You can do lots of things, but the gift that you carry is that you carry my heart. And those pens are for writing. And they're golden feathers. And that shifted your paradigm and opened up all sorts of new possibilities to risk embracing and stepping into, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
And just recently, that has taken an even bigger turn with a couple of opportunities that have come your way.
Yeah.
And one is with women speakers and empowering women's voices.
Yeah.
To be heard. And the other, though, was coaching. Both very parallel.
Yeah.
Very empowering to you and others and your agency in that. And you recently applied to a program. Take it from there.
Thanks, Tom. There's so much to unpack in my sessions and I'll dip in and out. But let's follow this trail because it's so cool. But yes, recently I applied to do a master's in sustainability leadership, and it's at the University of Wales, Trinity St David, and online. Obviously I live in Colorado. I'm actually from Wales, so this is this sweet like loop, and all the people who are online, most of them are Welsh, so I feel this like affinity
and
to them.
But it's taking you back to transform that.
Yes, yeah.
With a new vision, a new paradigm.
Well, interestingly, and what's really interesting, you know, if you've been in a situation where you're kind of contemplating doing higher education or more education, you know, the last time I did this level of education was 20 years ago with my Bachelor of Arts. So, and I've been meaning to do a master's for so many years, and I've got kids and it's never been the right time, and obviously it's investment. And so anyway, I think just a few weeks ago, it just all came together and I applied, and it was super last minute. The course was starting the following week. They got me on and sent me my offer letter, and remarkably, and I'd seen the university online. Obviously I'd been researching the course and all the rest of it and seen their logo before, but I hadn't clocked with me at all. But when I got my offer letter, I saw it, and basically on their logo are 2 gold feathers. And so I was just like, I texted Tom and I was like, Tom, look at this. This is crazy. And of course it isn't crazy, because that's how God speaks, and he affirms us through the journey in all sorts of different ways. And I think deep down, I'm a firm believer that God is always speaking. But I think when he speaks so obviously like that, sometimes you are shocked again. It's like, oh my gosh, but there were these 2 gold feathers there. And yeah, it's really interesting going back to that first problem solving session and that first spiritual formation session when those 2 gold feathers came through. And actually since then I've done multiple spiritual formation sessions, and they come up frequently. It's like a language that is mine. They like, I think in the first problem solving session I said, I think they're mine, and they are mine. They come up when I ask God a question, these 2 gold feathers. So to see them there on this logo of this master's degree. And Tom, the other thing about it, which is really remarkable, is in that I have this the first problem solving session when those 2 gold feathers were in my back pocket, and I was looking out. It's so that picture is so vivid to me, because in my mind during that problem solving session, I was stood in a spot that I know of is a beach in Wales, not far from this university, with these 2 gold feathers in my back pocket. Yeah. So that is just, I mean, you know, I couldn't have come up with that.
You can't make this up.
No.
But it comes to us.
Yeah. So And I think when you shared about, going forward into the spiritual formation, and that was very much about what I think I was questioning what I was doing with my life and my passion for serving people.
Adrift, I think, is close to the mark.
I think so. I was in this mine shaft, and then I was out on the street, and then I went back to the mine shaft. And I remember when I saw that writing on the wall, and you just mentioned it, how I was saying, I think, I've been trying to read something, but actually I'm supposed to write something.
Yes.
And that was this moment. And I think for me, what that represented was that instead of reading represented doing something that had already been created.
Mm-hmm.
But writing was this kind of, I've got to write something. I've got to do something new.
Your story.
Yeah. And so I think that really pivoted me into starting some of my own stuff. I've just started and launched my own coaching company called Bridge and Rhino. And like you said, I'm working now with Women Speakers Collective, which is a global organisation that their mission is to liberate women's voices across the globe, and I'm in with those guys who are amazing, super excited about that. And then obviously doing this here in this space with the Autonomic Healing podcast, and then the master's degree. I mean, I feel like my plate is full right now, but it's broad and it's creative, and it feels like I don't feel stuck. I feel like I've moved.
It's expansive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and empowering. And that's what happens when we connect with the transcendent, because God is love.
It's interesting to me that problem-solving session actually was to do with how I viewed God. I was struggling, that had to come. I think there was just this struggle for me, and it is ironic because I've been in, I've been a pastor. So you're supposed to connect with God, right, as a pastor, but actually
it kind of goes.
But I think deep down, these are the struggles of every human beings.
Yes.
And I think that question of how can I trust love? And I couldn't trust the love of God, but that had to be answered for me to then go forward.
Yes. But it wasn't just in a very general intellectual way. It was spoken to you very personally, in ways that you can't make up.
I think I've always found it easier to serve God than to be loved by God. It's easier for me to go, well, I'll do this for you, God. But the idea that, oh my gosh, God loves me, it was very difficult for me to accept that. And then I think the question shift there, in that, I think it was the problem solving, right? Where I was it was well, what have you got to give to me in this space, God? That was a good question for me, because there was this assumption that actually God's got something to give to me too. And, not everyone will relate to that dynamic in terms of their question with God.
No,
but
it's
for
whatever is their disconnect, where they're not on the same page with the transcendent.
And this would be this little root would affect all sorts of relationships in my life. Not being able to accept love, not being able to trust it. It actually stemmed from this place of I needed to know that I was loved by God and to trust that space, And so for me, this imagery, this really powerful imagery of the eagle and, and even now, if I have a hard day, or which we all do, that comes to mind, that God is with me. I see the eagle on my shoulder, and I'm feel well, me and God, the eagle, can take on the world, It gives me that confidence. So I think the imagery for me is something that works, something that God knows that works for me.
And would speak to you that way, of course.
Yeah.
The particular phraseology, and I'm quoting, I'm seeing this like, I think it is from the eagle, like solid gold feathers, and they are like pens, but I kind of feel like they are mine. Nothing for ages, but now I see myself as an adult with 2 gold feathers in my back pocket and an eagle, and the eagle's on my shoulder, and Ruth is off to sustainable leadership.
Yeah.
And I love that about the Leadership Masters program that you chose. It's not just leadership. It is sustainable leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Share a little bit about the sustainability aspect.
I mean,
sustainability.
sustainability.
What is that about?
It's a huge part of leadership as we move forward, I think, for the planet. And sustainability is it's how do we live our lives to the full without causing harm to ourselves, others, and the planet. Mm-hmm. So how do we? It's like the tension of the future and the now. And how do we live well within that? And there's obviously sustainability can be linked to the environment, and that's a massive part of what a lot of leadership organizations and businesses will be having to navigate. It's like they're gonna, whether they believe it or not, it's going to be part of our future. It is part of our present reality right now. But sustainability really is how do we do that with, they say people, profits, and the planet, those 3 areas. And so
and they're not mutually exclusive.
Not at all.
And you don't have to exploit to achieve them.
Not at all. And I've always been, in people leadership really, and looking at that side of it. And so it's just a great learning space for me to be thinking through how do we lead well with kind of that focus of sustainability. It feels like it's future thinking. So I'm super excited for it. I'm really enjoying learning in that space, and feel slightly out of my depth because I haven't done this type of study for so many years, but I'm getting there, and I'll continue. Yes. But it feels like something that I'm going to be able to really apply to the areas that I'm passionate about, whether it's this cause of women's liberating the voices of women across the globe, or whether it's to do with coaching,
empowering their leadership,
or whether it's to do with building a coaching business where we can serve pastors and leaders who needs someone to walk alongside them. So that's what Bridge and Rhino is, or this space of autonomic healing, which we're really excited about at the moment, how that's evolving. And so I feel like it's going to give me it's going to broaden my thinking in terms of leadership, and is going to give me some good skills to apply to the places that I'm pumped to be in,
Yeah. Because homeostasis isn't just something that occurs in human beings. Homeostasis is life, and it occurs in everything. There's a homeostasis that functions on the planet, where things are optimal and functioning and operating in harmony. There's a homeostasis that can be internal to a human being, and we're functioning in body, mind, and spirit in an optimal, normalized way, managing change, because there's always change. Is whether that change is beneficial and productive, or whether it's detrimental and destructive. And homeostasis can even turn the traumas into beneficial and optimized.
Yeah, for sure.
Giving us a new way to look at those dark rooms. And now they're full of light.
Yeah.
And empowered to go new places. But homeostasis is also in the environment. A termite mound, as the author about that book that I've referenced that's about homeostasis, and J. Scott Turner, Purpose and Desire. a nest of animals, or this nest that we live in, that's the planet, or the nest that is relationships. And that can include the transcendent. And that is love.
Yeah, so good. Before we finish, Tom, I want to talk about the bottle of wine, because I think it's such
that captured you.
Yeah, it's such a good story. It's such a good, again, it's like we had this, trail of, of these gold feathers that very, so I have my eagle who represents God to me. And then I have I guess part of my calling was these two gold feathers. But then in the mine shaft, so I was pulled down to this mine shaft. That's what the context was. I was in this mine, sitting on the floor, looking at the wall with this writing on that I couldn't read and all the rest of it. But then in that space, I saw a bottle of wine. Am I correct?
This is literally what you said. I'm kind of going down these steps. I'm going down below the ground. You laughed. And you said, this is so weird and so specific. I don't know why this is coming up. Seeing a wine rack. And I'm pulling out a bottle that says on the label, 1878. And next to it is an old alarm clock. And I feel like I hear the words, it is time to wake up. Like the alarm clock is going off, but it hasn't gone off yet. But I've got it. And it feels like soon. And the bottles on the wine rack were dated. 1878.
1878. And so obviously, so this is in my... Was it my problem solving or spiritual?
Yep, that was the spiritual formation.
Spiritual formation. Yep. So obviously after this session, I was just like, I remember I had loads of different things to do that afternoon, but then finally I managed to have half an hour and I thought, I'm going to Google that date because it's just so specific. Like, what is that? And I found out this information that...
I can read the text.
You can read the text if you can find it.
Yeah, I've got the text.
You got it.
Tom, I just looked this up. Mind blown emoji. 1878. The date on the wine bottle in the mine shaft was the year Evan Roberts was born, who was used by God to start the 1904 Welsh revival. And that saw 100,000 people come to know God in a year. It has had such an impact. It was reported in the news that jails were empty and bars started closing because of the lack of customers. He is born into a miner's family. Mind
blown emoji.
Yep.
Because I was in the mine.
Yep. And his father and grandfather were both miners in Wales, all in caps, and Wales is the place I was born.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah, so it was just crazy to think of that. But again, no, of course, God's speaking. But I think when I think about that, obviously, it's super specific with the date and then leading back to that and Wales again and the spiritual. I think the spirituality that was carried in. I mean, I've studied the Welsh revival. It's something that I've studied before. But I think what happened there was that, which is very interesting to the rest of that spiritual formation session, was I think what happened in that time of history was that God became accessible to everyone on the street.
Yep.
And so there was something in that spiritual formation session. I was like laying this table out on the street and I put the wine bottle on the table saying there's something that has to be happening out on the street. And I think what that represents to me, it's for everyone.
Yes.
It's not for church people or religious people. This is God's wine is for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's
because God's love is for everyone. So celebrate.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, I think there was a significant aspect of Evan Roberts, which was very charitable and caring for people who were down and out and destitute and homeless. And he, as an expression of love, cared for and provided for in remarkable ways.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was a remarkable session, and it's it's been a continued way actually that I connect with God. And if I want to speak to God, if I want to ask him a question, I can. Part of the way I do that now is through autonomic healing activation with spiritual formation. And it's a wonderful way to be able to feel that, just the personal connection with God himself. So it's been a really impactful time for me. And then, when I think back and think where I was and where I am, it really truly is remarkable. So thank you, Tom, for sharing all this with me. And
I just appreciate we're created this way, that we exist this way, and that homeostasis is something that we can activate in our body and mind and spirit and optimize who we are as human beings, to love ourselves and others, and to live an expansive envisioning of what is possible.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Autonomic Healing Podcast.
Join us next time as we continue in our conversations with Tom. If you're interested in pursuing your own autonomic healing journey and want to find a practitioner, visit our website, innerworkings.org. See you at the next episode.